Welcome to From Clinical to Entrepreneurial, OT Private Practice Journeys, an Ontario Society of Occupational Therapists podcast. In this series, we connect with occupational therapists, private practitioners, and business owners, and we hear about their inspiration, their stories, and their lessons learned. I'm Seema Sandwani, OSOT's Director of Strategic Partnerships and Practice. In this episode, my co-host Shari and I interview three OTs, Alison Hendricks, Sue Wahl, and Elizabeth Silenzi. We have a unique conversation about an alternative path to private practice that involves franchising and networking. The Collaborative Approach Therapy Services, or CATS, team shares how creating a network of collaborative practices can be a jumpstart into business ownership, accelerating growth while maintaining clinical excellence and professional autonomy. Hello, listeners. Today with us, we have Elizabeth, Sue, and Alison. Welcome to the three of you. We are so pleased to have you with us. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of entrepreneurship, we'd like to hear a little bit from you about your backgrounds. So please share with us where you did your occupational therapy degrees and maybe a little bit about your practice before launching into business. Maybe we'll start with you, Elizabeth.
Sure. I'm American, so I did my undergrad and my graduate studies down in Troy, New York at Sage Graduate School. I moved to Canada in 2016. I've always been in like private practice, but I started the business after my second mat leave, I kind of wanted to expand what I knew, and I felt kind of stunted as an OT, kind of working for someone else, and wasn't able to explore kind of everything I really wanted to do. And I happened to come across Sue and Alison, and it kind of just blossomed from there to be able to jump in and kind of see the big picture for myself as an OT.
That's great. And how about you, Sue? Thank you.
I did my bachelor at Western in London, and it was 29 and a half years ago. So I do not have a master's degree. And I worked in pediatrics basically my whole career. I did a little bit in adults for somebody's mat leave, basically. And then I started in private over 10 years ago, working for someone else, and then eventually growing that and starting CATS.
Okay, great. I can relate. I have a bachelor's as well, Sue. No master's.
I did too. Yeah. I went back for a master's in education, but it's
a thing.
It's a thing. It really is at this point in time when everyone else has a master's and you've got a bachelor's.
Alison, over to you.
Yeah, and I can join the club. So I was the last bachelor's at McGill. So I snuck myself in just in time to make that a little faster and cheaper. So graduated from McGill University in 2008. And from there started in mental health in Guelph. And following that, got into private practice, pediatrics, working in other clinics. And then overall sort of worked myself into an idea when Sue presented it and said, hey, do you need a partner for that? So we'll get into that a little bit.
Great.
But I've always just been a take the opportunity type of person. And that's where my collaboration with CATS came from.
So I'm going to jump in right away with a question because I know we have a million other things that we want to talk about. But before we start, you guys have a really unique business structure and I'm really curious to learn about it. I have to say, I reviewed sort of your information, and on the weekend, I was like sitting there with ChatGPT because Seema and Victoria know I love ChatGPT. And I was like, do people franchise a therapy business? Like, how does this work? I'm really, really curious. You guys have me thinking.
Okay.
Why don't you take that, Sue? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, you want me to take that. We call that the F word.
Yeah.
we don't, like, I think it just has such a negative connotation. That
You think McDonald's and Olive Garden.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like therapy. It never
control
crossed my mind.
everything. And people go into private practice to have some freedom. So we want to make sure that we explain when the word franchise comes out, like what it is, and that people do have a lot of freedom to have
Yeah.
their own business. It's really, franchising is like, there's only so many legal business models, right? You can be a sole proprietor, you can be in a
Yeah.
partnership, you can be incorporated. There's really, like, there are rules and you have to fit into a box. And the franchise box is one where the therapist gets to own it. Like
Yeah.
in private, you have kind of, up until this point, you've had two choices. You can work for a huge company like LifeMark or something, you know, like you can be a private therapist in a pretty large company, or you can do it on your own. Like there's really no other opportunity to own what you build
Yeah.
if you're in. Yeah. So that's kind of where the model started. We were like, we would love to take this. It's working so well. We want to take it to other cities, but we want the therapist to have the opportunity to own it.
Well, and what I think is really interesting about the idea is, when I was starting, I didn't have my SOPs. I didn't, even building a website was new. Like everything's new. And I know that component of it, like how do you invoice? How do you market? All those things. But if that structure is available to just sort of input and then you can take it and run with it from there with other support, I think that's actually a really amazing way of getting started. I never made the leap to thinking about that in a business therapy context before. So what do you guys offer as a component of this? How does that work? Do you have all those structures in place?
That's exactly. So just as you said, Shari, and other than the legal documents that state franchise, we talk about
Yeah.
ourselves as a network because
Right.
it's really more about sharing those resources. And kind of we think about it as like it's a jump start of almost about 3 to 5 years, right? That's what
Yeah.
we've put into CATS.
Easily.
So
Yeah.
you get to get started 5 years under your belt with those SOPs, with those email templates, with our EMR and our billing and our invoicing and our strategies to keep schedules full and our hiring and our onboarding. And so really over the 5 years, we've been building all of that structure intentionally to be able to pass it on to other OTs.
And then, so what does that look like for the OT who's interested or someone else who's interested in that? What's the sort of buy-in, percent profit splits and so on? And sorry, a million questions at once. And then do you guys have sort of a central marketing pool, or is that for each individual location and so on?
Can you speak on this?
Go for it.
So when I was looking, or just in general, so after my second mat leave, I was coming from a position that I didn't want to go back to.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's explore going on my own, right? So I kind of dabbled in what the logo would look like trying to
Yeah.
just explore. I think I even reached out to OSAT, like, what does private practice even look like for someone who
Yeah.
knows absolutely nothing?
Right.
And again, it happened to coincide, like finding, I'm pretty sure it was on Indeed, Alison and Sue just being like, would you want to have your own occupational therapy clinic? And it was kind of like, well, this is
Yes,
quite nice timing. Right. And given where I am in Hamilton, it was kind of like they're looking for different, cities who want, and OTs obviously, who want to explore this private practice world, but really have no understanding of
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
little. I had very little
As
of
most
what that would
OTs
look like.
do, right? There's no
Who
education as
does?
part of
Yeah.
our occupational
There
therapy.
isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in speaking, right, so we started talking about like what this would look like, and it's exactly that, where they have the business model already set up, right? The website, how we utilize resources, and I'm able to explore all of their knowledge to be able to implement that. Basically was all done for me, right? I had to learn how to really do it from, my own private practice,
The
right? Where they have
perspective. Yeah.
theirs and I'm a sole proprietor where they're not. So, right. So, but all of their strategies, especially the financial aspect, like completely foreign to me. Without Sue, I don't know where to be right now. Right. But even to share, like building all the other resources of different practice areas that really wasn't something that I had done, but now we get to share knowledge as well. Right. So there's so much involved that was kind of done for you and already implemented, and kind of, all right, the mistakes were made and now we're kind of building it, making it better. And we get to go back and forth instead of just trying to figure it out on your own. So that was
Right.
quite wonderful.
So
And can
then,
we, oh, sorry, Sherry. I was just going to follow up on your actual question, Sherry, around marketing. So do each of you manage marketing in a different way? How do you market to clients? How do you collect their feedback? Share with us a little bit about that.
So we both answers are true. We have some joint marketing, and then it's up to us to sort of get our clinics out in the community. So, part of that is social media, and we do have a pool of social media posts that we can share, that we contribute together. We've got, again, systems, so that a big piece of our marketing is following up with referral sources, right? Is making sure that we're known in the community. And then another piece is making sure that we offer good services. So like Elizabeth was saying, when we have consistent resources and services that we offer to our families, word of mouth gets out there. So I would say that's actually a big piece of the marketing as well.
And it's really nice to see how sometimes families have relatives in another city. And
Yeah.
so we kind of cross market for each other with our services. We've also invested quite a bit this year in our SEO because we have a shared website.
Yeah.
We have more,
Got some power.
we've got a bit more power there. And it's
Yeah.
just so great. And that has actually, we've seen the numbers increase with that. And I know you wanted some specifics. I find one of the biggest marketing pieces for me, for my clinic, is the Google listing.
Yes. Google ads, right? I'm telling you.
Yeah.
The amount of money you can spend on a Google ad compared to how much it costs for you to go out and do an in-service. Like sometimes when you think about the efficiency of $100 with Google ads compared to a day prepping, buying lunch, talking to people, if you're short on time or funds or a voice, Google ads is a miracle.
Yeah.
And Sue, just for our folks that are listening, SEO, search engine optimization, is what you're referring to there.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I can follow up really quickly, because I know you guys have a pool of social media posts. I have like 7 notes here, questions I want to ask. So for the new person who's going into this, where do those posts come from? How do you create them? How do you decide what to post? Do you have someone helping you with marketing? Do you build them yourselves? Do you use those fabulous AI tools right now that sort of mix and match your posts and your pictures? Metricool? Is that there's a social media.
We're not that cool,
report.
Sherry. We have a few set, like here's your first month if you want. Like you take it and you can change anything about
Yeah.
it, but it is done for you. Here's your first month. Here's another series you can run. Here's a what is
Okay.
sensory integration series. Here is a ABCs of OT series. Here's a
Okay.
you know,
And
we
did
have
you
a-
guys build those?
Yeah, we did.
And so did you do the image on Canva and then the
Yeah.
text?
Yeah.
And was it sort of, did you have any consultation or anything? I'm just thinking about the person who's like, but I have no idea what to post.
Yeah.
Like, how do you pick what to post?
So a little bit of all of it, again, is I would say, especially when we started out, I was super keen on it. Also very curmudgeonly about it. I'm not a social media fan.
No, me neither.
And so I was like this.
Yeah.
But I did do a little bit of, some online courses, sort of pretty budget at the time, but at least gets me thinking about it.
And by
So-
online courses, was it sort of a social media marketing management kind of an idea?
Exactly. Just to
Okay.
even get me started on it. I don't even have Instagram personally. So I was like, I don't,
gotcha.
this is new.
Again, bachelor's degree. We all are on the same
Bachelor's
page
degree,
with this.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
But
too
got
old for that stuff.
got started with it. And then the other piece actually is then we brought in a team member. So,
Okay.
one of our other OTs, and it was a really nice way for some additional hours. They were younger, they were keen on it, knew how to make reels. So
Yes.
the other thing is bringing in other people on our team to support with all of that.
Okay.
So that was really nice. And then the other thing, I think if it's fair to say, Sue and Elizabeth, you guys can add, is our social media, we see it as like, if somebody gets to it, they see that we're relevant. They see that we are posting, but it's not our primary method of being seen, especially because we are clinic based, we are brick and mortar. So it's really much more about our local community for us
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah,
I think
Okay.
we
that's
did
kind
have a paid person at
Mhm.
one point.
You
So
did?
we had a
Okay.
little stint where they did a month for us and they taught us some things too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you sort
Yeah.
of learned from their experiences.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's perfect, Sue. I think you were just taking us really nicely into this subject area of scaling and growth. So really curious to hear from the three of you about how did you grow? How are you continuing to manage growth? I would say both with team members and maybe even any other external consultants you might use. Do you have lawyers on your team, etc.?
Mhm.
Let's chat about scaling and growth.
Elizabeth, do you want to start with sort of team members? You've had some team members recently.
I have. For me, so I'm the newest location, right? So I opened in 2022 in March. And since then, so learning from how to even take on, you know, team members, bring them on, right? We have a system that kind of supports onboarding, which has definitely evolved over the last 2 years for sure. But for me, it's made it kind of structured to support them through what does, using our EMR system look like? The supports we have, what's available to you. That process.
Can I ask specifically what that system looks like? Like for example, in our practice, sorry, my voice is going a little sideways on me. So for example, in our practice, I have an SOP website and we have links and sort of a checklist. These are the things that you need to do. And then we have our days and our calendar we set for the therapists that are joining us. And they do these meetings with different people at different times. We go through the checklist. So what does that look like for you guys specifically? Like how do you guys structure the onboarding? Like what
So the
resources do you
onboarding is
have?
basically like a checklist, right?
Okay.
And there's a ton of links involved in it because it's connected also to our backend system that
Okay.
has all the resources, all the videos that Allison and Sue have put together with other team members to really
Great.
explain, they're actually being explained to you how to set up our EMR system and how to set up scheduling, right? All the other
Okay.
intricacies that go into your day-to-day practice as a clinician, um, it's there for you, right? And then it's built in when we're meeting together to go through it. Any questions,
So it's
emails,
almost like a
templates.
self-directed course that you're walking through
Oh, yep. And there's
people through.
and it's just grown so much so that it really can include in quite detail, right? So that you feel supported, we're there, but there's also you're seeing all the
Yeah.
clinicians and different OTs that are involved in cats, right? So
Yeah.
you're not just right, like this is how like Allison and Sue and how each, clinic kind of supports each other all the time because right, their faces and they're being seen as well, although they're not physically at my location and vice versa, right? So it's really that kind of be able to support one another at all times without having to be necessarily in the same space.
It's
So
truly a
it's quite
network.
nice.
It's truly a
It
network.
truly is.
And Elizabeth, for these team members you're talking about, are they salaried or are they independent contractors with you?
They're employees. I do not do independent contractors.
They're employees.
So I'm just going to interject here and ask a question about your interview processes. Do you guys have sort of that? Anyway, tell me how you guys set up your interviews because I'm horrible for that because I meet with a person and I'm like, oh, I like your vibe. And then let's work together, and I'm always telling myself, step back, do more of a behavioral interview. Don't jump. It's like the point system and all the stuff they tell you. What do
Rubrics.
you guys do?
Oh, Sherry, I am like you.
It's
I,
so
We're all
and
very
hard.
different.
and I've even felt bad when I had multiple interviewees. Like I felt so bad for these
You're
new
like, how
grads
do I
that I
hire
couldn't
you
hire.
all?
And I know,
This is
I
why
know.
this is
You
all a
each
group of
work 2
OTs.
hours.
Yeah, but that's not my problem anymore. My problem is, could you please come and work for me? Like I
No,
am
the industry, the
having
way
to
it's
turn
going right
people
now,
away. It's just, yeah,
it's
it's
a tough time.
it is a tough time to hire right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and pediatrics is a
Mm.
lot of work, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
I would add to
It's
that
a lot of
though.
setup and cleanup, but it's very
Mhm.
rewarding. Is that what you're gonna say? Yeah.
Well, what I was going to add is, I do think a big piece of it is fit with cats, with the network, with the
Yeah.
values that we have. And then as Elizabeth was talking about, we have the systems that we can support people. And, one of the things we're really quite proud of is we can take a new grad and we can be there for them and we can get them running, and really feeling confident in about 6 months. So we have them out there before that and we're right there behind them. A lot of it at that first bit is, you got this, we got this. We're,
Yeah.
a lot of mentoring and support, but we can hire in part the person who feels right, because then we can support those skills.
Right.
So, yeah, and that is something that I should sort of reinforce as well, because I think this is the feedback I get from the therapists that I work with, is they'll often say, like, they really appreciate that the whole team is just really friendly and cohesive and sort of works well together. So I think maybe the fact that we all sort of gravitate to a certain type of personality and so on does help bring together a better team. Maybe there is something to be said for that, and we don't have to be quite so hard on ourselves about our hiring practices. Because I agree with you. I mean, skills can be taught, but that vibe can sometimes not magically appear if it's not there at the beginning.
Exactly.
So I have a feeling that Seem is like, okay, I gotta move you on to the
No,
next
no.
thing.
Well, I think the way the team here is answering all these questions is dovetailing really nicely into some of the other sections
Yes.
we want to cover. So, for example, each of you are independent business owners, but there's a ton of supports and resources built in. So, so it's a wonderful model. And I'm a little curious about, so do each of you collaborate on, let's say, those legal pieces, those regulatory requirements? Because I imagine, and I appreciate, Alison, that you brought up the word value. I like that there's a bit of autonomy built in, but there must be, or I'm assuming there are some parameters around just how much autonomy. There's a reputational piece here. Cats is a name. So talk to us a little bit about, well, how do you maintain the regulatory pieces, the legal pieces, and maybe where's the freedom, and how much freedom is there for that autonomy piece, knowing there's I won't say the F word, but knowing there's a network at play here. So maybe we'll start with you, Alison.
Yeah. So again, I think it is a piece that we bring together. And I think it's a piece that, depending on where you are in your clinic journey, you have capacity for more or less of it, right? It being those extra legal pieces, those extra HR pieces. And it is where we get to pool it all together. So for example, Sue and I do have a lawyer that we have worked with to make sure that we are compliant with things like our consent forms. Sue then has reached out to an HR company because she had something specific at her clinic that was an investment she needed to make for her clinic. Why can't we all benefit?
Right.
Right. So sometimes it's who needs it when, but the beauty is we don't hold it to ourselves. Business development. Again, we've talked about scaling. I sort of invested in a year of business development, and it got us thinking, okay, 6 months in advance. It got us setting goals. It got us on a drumbeat of, every 4 months, we all come together, all the partners, and we set our goals and we set our action plans. So we really put aside 2 hours where we're working on the business, not in it.
So, Allison, when
Mm,
you said you set aside time for business development, did you mean education on business, like personal education on business development?
exactly. So that was
And
a
what did
course
you
that
do? Okay.
so it was Rachel Cook, Promote Yourself to CEO, and she has a
Okay.
podcast, so that I've loved it. And
Okay.
it wasn't about therapy. It was just about running and scaling a business
Yeah.
and really sort of that business life harmony. How if it's for women, many of the women have families, and we know that that's a balance.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So then when you are pooling your resources, you've
Mm.
got the different locations. Are there sort of pots that every group contributes to sort of financially as well? Like sort of a percent? I'm just wondering how that's structured. So is a
Yeah.
percent go to be shared with the team marketing? Does a percent go to be shared with the team legal? And then is there sort of a profit for the corporation of cats that goes from each group? How does that all work?
Yeah, Sue's our business is our numbers. So go ahead,
Okay,
Sue.
Sue, let's hear the numbers. I'm
Well,
curious.
in general, a franchise of this sort of site, like this sort of sector,
Yeah.
would be about 6% of revenue goes into a shared pot, and
Okay.
2% on top would go in to a shared pot for advertising.
Okay. Okay,
We've
great.
kind of followed that. Right now, we've decided in pediatrics, there's really no shortage of clients right now.
Yeah.
So we are not charging the 2% for advertising. So right now, we're all just putting 6% into a shared pot, and it pays for all those shared expenses.
And what would you put under that shared expense list?
Like our website, our SEO, there's some admin time in there to build the network.
Right.
There's we offer like kind of like a webinar a few times a year, a number of times a year, and that's paid. So if it's one of like Alison's staff members or Elizabeth's staff members doing that, we can pay that out of the network because it's open to everybody. Yeah, I'm
Our
trying to think what else.
EMR.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
our
Yeah.
software. Yes, that's all.
Invoicing
Yeah.
software and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
our annual retreat. So again, the
Yeah.
other piece of bringing a community and the network together. Every year we bring all of our locations and our teams together, and professional development as well as just community development.
How many locations are there?
Currently 3 owned locations, but we've actually just had another member sign who's going to be opening a location in Brantford I think she's starting in March. Is that right, Sue?
Yes, that's
Okay.
right.
Yeah. So we've also found our avatar is women coming off of mat leave.
You know
Or
what?
whatever
I
works,
laughed
Allison.
when you said that, Elizabeth, because that's when I started my practice too. It was like my
And it
son's
is.
birthday was October 4th, and a year later, October 5th, I opened my practice.
We are hearing this story from
We've heard it
a lot of our
before.
guests. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
same thing. Yeah.
So my next question is actually about, I guess, kind of the initial investment outlay. And here I'm thinking about specifically, this is a pediatric practice. It's not like, my mental health practice where you just start seeing clients. You need equipment, especially with, such a wide range of pediatric clients that you guys see. So how do you start that? Is there sort of an initial investment that you have to make? Did you have to take out a loan? How did you know which equipment was the best to purchase? What was that process like?
So I'll start with this. I was fortunate enough to, when I decided to go into, right, having my own practice, I was fortunate enough to be able to reach out to another healthcare provider who owned her own clinic, who had some extra space that I could utilize. So it was really,
Okay.
like I said, I was so fortunate because I had my own room, and I was able to bring in a lot of equipment that I've actually just collected over the years.
Okay. So it was a sublet arrangement that you started
It
with?
was, right? So
Okay.
I rented right? So based on what I was making a month, she took a percentage. So it wasn't like a set
Okay.
price, which
Oh,
was
that is
nice
nice.
too, right? Because you didn't really know what you were going to make. And I think she
Right.
definitely understood that, given she was
Yeah.
also in, right, same kind of type of business, just not occupational therapy. So with that, so as I grew, I was able to kind of take on, say, a swing. I'm also fortunate enough to have somebody who kind of made a lot of my equipment. So like I have an
Oh,
incline board, I have some platform swings. Sue is like the DIY making things, which has been fantastic as well, right? Because you start to get these ideas, and then there are some products that I do trust more than others. So
yeah.
it's also been something to like some of the swings that I do have that aren't the DIY ones. But right, so as I grew, I was able to take on more stuff. Being in the clinic I was in, she had a ton of games and different things that I could try. So it was, again, it was quite nice. When I did take over this clinic, this space, I did have to put some money into it. But again, this is kind of where the network was, I was really fortunate, is that they were able to support me. So instead of me paying interest per month on the money I had to spend, they took on that portion for me. So now I pay back into the network a little bit more each month until it's all done, right? So
So, do you mean that you borrowed from the network and now you're paying the network back?
The loans from the
Okay,
network.
so the
Yeah,
right,
loan
got it.
was from the
exactly.
network. Okay, okay.
Right.
Interest-free loan from the
Yeah,
network.
yeah.
Right.
Right.
So
And nothing is
that,
interest-free these days, so that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
so
And then a
again, I was
percentage
fortunate.
of your
Yeah.
monthly profits now goes back into that.
Yeah, so on top of my like 6% a month that we
Yeah.
pay into our network, I pay an extra certain amount of money towards it, so that within a year, the loan that was provided to me, right, will be done.
So then the 6%, Sue, that each group pays into the network, that also covers the loans and so on. Does that also cover CAT's profit, like the professional corporation's profits or the
Yes, but the network isn't all that profitable, to be honest.
Profit.
Like our clinics have more
Yes,
potential. That's something we didn't
that
realize when we first went into this. It's like our clinics actually have more potential to support us in retirement than the network
like
does.
your individual clinic. So you're
Yes.
Yes.
okay,
Okay.
so
So, and
you're
yeah. So we're interested in expanding and having more therapists, but from a financial point of view, it makes more sense for us to open new locations
yeah,
than to necessarily attract new therapists.
okay.
But so, we like to do these things and let people know about the network, but we really are not putting a lot of marketing in otherwise
Okay.
to really growing the network for that reason, that the network account probably has the least amount of
Yes.
money.
Yeah. Well,
And it's
that's
funny
really
though,
interesting. Yeah.
And
you know,
the loan was a one-time, like it's not a guarantee. It was
For
just we were
sure,
in
yeah.
a position that we were able
Worked
to
out.
do that. So I think that was wonderful. Like it was just we were in this position. We didn't want Elizabeth to be paying a lot of interest while she made this big step.
So Allison and Sue, did you guys have to take that leap of, 'cause that's scary, right? It's
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna take a loan and I'm gonna buy all this equipment and
Yeah.
then I'm gonna start. Did you guys have to do that?
a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So I'll let Sue tell her story, but same, as Elizabeth, my starting point was one room
Yeah.
in a speech clinic. And it was a colleague of mine that I knew well, and it was a great spot to start. And it was a great spot when I was the only OT, within CAT's Guelph. And it was probably about a year that space fit. And then some of it's also luck and preparation, but the
I'm with
space
you.
next door came
Yeah.
available. And so I jumped into the space next door. And it's so terrifying, this investment that you're making. And I remember at that point, there was 3 treatment rooms, and I thought, I'm never going to fill 3 treatment rooms. I was going to sublet it, but that quickly grew.
Yeah.
But I also didn't furnish all 3 treatment rooms at the same time, right? So I
Right.
took what I had from my one room and I moved it into another room. And then we were able to take our time as our wait list grew, and then we were able to hire. Then we needed 2 treatment rooms. Then we needed 3 treatment rooms. So I think sometimes it's important to remember, and we remind our partners where we are now. So Cat's Guelph,
Mm,
at I think we're 6 years old,
Yeah.
is 6 years old.
right.
It's, that's not where you start, that's where you get to.
Mhm.
So, but to answer the question in terms of investment, yes, I did take some investment or some a loan when I renovated that first space. But then when we expanded, I was able to pay for that expansion by saving in the clinic. So once
Okay.
I got that initial revenue coming in and enough of it, we're able to then plan ahead and keep that for our growth.
And I
Okay.
think Alison was smart. Alison and I have very different backgrounds with our money mindset.
Love to
And
hear
I
that.
have
Okay.
yes, credit to, also want to give credit to my aunt, Shirley Sutton, an OT, retired OT now, who makes everything and taught me how to make platform swings and bolsters and everything. So I am a much more DIY. Like, I made this swing set in our background in my driveway, and
Amazing.
you know, but Allison's clinic grew faster because she wasn't scared to take out a loan and really
Yeah.
renovate and have 3 spaces. So I learned from that. It's like, it's amazing having the 3, now 4 of us have the kind of the exact same business, but not compete with each other because we're in
Mhm.
different cities. So it, like, you get to kind of experiment with stuff without making the mistake yourself, right? Or
Right.
learning someone
See
else.
things.
Like, it's really cool. That's what I love the most about it, is our sort of quarterly retreats and our strategy sessions and sort of hearing where everybody's at.
And borrowing from each other. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you've
Yeah.
raised through that money mindset, and you've talked a little bit about that. And let's talk a bit further around money and client fees. How do you determine what to charge your clients? Do you have sliding scales? Do you get coverage through insurance? Would love to hear from
Yeah.
each of you on that.
And is it consistent from city to city?
Yeah.
So that is where some of the freedom is we suggest and we help with budgeting, right? So a lot of those client fees come from how much does it actually cost to run a business? How
Yeah.
much does it cost to pay your team? How
Yeah.
much does it cost to pay your team well enough that you retain your team, right?
Yes.
And keep the
And-
lights on in your clinic, and right.
And be prepared for the summer,
Right.
lulls.
Mm.
So there is a lot. It's not just a number that you pick out of the air. And
Yeah.
it's not just a number that you pick because the person down the street picked. So there is some flexibility in that because different cities have different rents and expenses.
Yeah.
But we help you really assess the numbers, look at the budget for that.
And do you
So
have a formula that you use for that?
Sue's got a spreadsheet for that.
Sue, I think
The
you and
do-it-yourself
I
money
have
person, that's
some
Sue.
similarities.
But it's beautiful because
I
Elizabeth and
like
I
your
really
brain.
benefited.
I think too, we are actually, as of January 1st, we are charging the same, which is like,
Okay.
I'm the slow one. I'm the like, oh, can I really charge that much? Like,
Right?
child of the
Yes.
70s, my idea
Yeah.
of what a dollar should pay for is different.
It's hard to get out of that. It's hard to
So-
get out of that.
So I'll concretely ask you then, Sue, I guess, because for other therapists out there who are like, okay, well, what do I charge, right? So at our practice, we've sort of got our, well, this percent, right? This percent of our, we look at our annuals from last year and we're like, okay, well, this percent went to marketing. This percent was just operating costs. This was admin. This was therapists. This was, owners' compensation. And this is our clinic profit, professional corporation profit goals. So then based on all that, what do we need to be able to, like you said, Allison, retain our therapists, make people happy, and sort of hit that sweet spot between, not paying more per hour than we are making when it comes to charging clients. So what does your formula look like?
It looks like that. Like, we use the profit first kind of system.
That's my
Again,
book.
yeah, yeah. Credit
I
to
talked about that when Seema and I were talking a
Trish, that
couple of
their
months ago.
podcast. Yeah. Yeah. So we use that percentage kind of system, and we have our percentages, and we work with each clinic to set their percentages. Every situation
Okay.
is a little different.
Yeah.
In a larger clinic, you can have less for space and
Yeah.
rent and utilities as
That's
a
right.
percentage.
Fixed cost
It's a fixed
decreases as
cost.
your profits increase.
Yeah. So in a smaller clinic, you need to figure out how you can put more percent towards that. So we have our different targeted percentages on our different budgets. But yeah, pretty much just like
Oh,
what you
that's great. Okay, so everybody, this is now two of us who are in love with profit first.
Well, and were you aware, Shari, there is a profit first for therapists? That is
I
now
don't know
available.
if I got there.
I forget who the author is.
It's
but
not the same author?
it's not the same author, but it's like authorized by Mike McDavid.
Oh,
So she's an accountant who works specifically with therapists. And it's really
how
good because it does make the
interesting.
numbers fit with an OT clinic, where profit first is a really great idea, but you really have to play
You
with the
have
numbers
to
for our business.
adapt and tweak to what you've actually got. Yeah.
So that's a great $30 investment if you are starting out, is check out
Yes,
that.
absolutely. I would, and it's very, I know we've got to move on, but it's really simple. So to an OT who's just getting started, you'll read it or you'll listen to it and you'll be like, oh, of course. Then it's just the discipline to actually follow it and make it happen. But it forces you, because now you're in a position, like you said earlier, Allison, where now you have employees and you can't play around with those numbers, because if you don't do it right, you can't pay people.
Yeah. And Shari, you say it's easy, but it's
Simple
not.
versus
Simple.
easy.
But I'll tell you, one of the things I loved about it, and one of the things I think we're all still working on, and again, we really support each other, is profit is necessary, right?
Yes.
We talk a lot about running a sustainable clinic, and people do often think that profit is a bad word.
Yes,
Like, well,
they
if
do.
you're making profit, then you're not paying enough. And it's like, if I'm not making profit, the lights are going to be off, right? If I'm not making profit, then I don't have a savings for when, again, the summer lulls. Like, we know that now in business. So it's a
December.
mindset. And what's that?
And
December.
the December lull.
Yes, exactly. Holidays, cancellation.
beginning of January is a
Oh,
low.
yeah.
Yeah.
January 15, people start calling again. That was 2 weeks in. But until then, you're kind of like, oh no.
And so, like Sue mentioned, there's freedom in how you set the cost, but what we also support each other with is just almost the courage to increase your prices when the time is right for that. And then again, the systems. How do we communicate it to families? What's our actual sort of fee structure that we are going to present? What are all the steps that need to happen? How do we need to change things in our billing software? What are all the steps that go into? Because once you finally decided, yep, this is the stage, this is the step we need to take, there's then the actual logistics of it. So we've got all of that systematized as well, so that you can kind of make the decision and have it done in a week, which is really nice. You're gonna be like, doing it.
The last time I did it, I couldn't believe it. It was half a day. I was like, I went through my price increase checklist. I was like, oh yeah, okay, here's the email to family. Here's the things I have to print. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, that was so fast.
So it sounds like you guys are SOP lovers as well.
Yes. Lovers.
Standard operating procedure, just spelling out that acronym.
That's right.
It's a lifesaver. It's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am
in
an
some ways
SOP lover.
Yeah, the
therapists are SOP haters.
SOP lovers, yes. To say the idea of the network made us write everything down because we were always like, oh, we're going to plan this for the next person, but really it's helping us a lot.
Well, Sue, and I think that's interesting because your impetus was like, we've got the network. I have to do these SOPs. And my impetus was different, but it was the same thing. I have no voice. I have to do the SOPs. So it kind of like forced us, but now that you're on the other side of like doing all that work and all that effort and so on, it's awfully nice just to be able to be like, here's the link. You know, like it's such a time saver and it's
And
more
allows you
helpful
to
for
scale.
people.
And
It
allows you to
does.
scale.
And it's
Yeah.
more helpful for the person that you're working with as well, because they don't have to go back and forth and get a slightly different answer depending on who they talk to and so on. So I think it
And
does help.
Allison, it's like you said, then you can hire for values or feel because you know you've got all those things in place to help support any new people that come on board. Just a quick confirmation. So for each of your sites and each of your clinics, it's solely OT based, right? There's no other disciplines. And I think that takes us nicely into sort of my wrap up question, because there were some comments around renting space from other disciplines, maybe getting started with other disciplines. So, my last question for each of you is around looking back on your trajectory, on your paths, on your experience. Is there something you would change if you had to do it all over again?
I'll start by just saying no.
Wow,
And
that's
I know,
great.
but really and truly, I feel very, I don't know if lucky is the right word, privileged, but that Sue and I in a discussion, and again, I honestly sort of just said, you know, Sue, if you think that you need a partner, this sounds like a big dream that you have, sounds like a lot for one person. So starting there. And then the reason I say no is because of our goal for the network, we started smart. We started with SOPs. We started with a vision. And I think that really helped it grow naturally. And it helped it grow, in a way that had balance for us, that let us go, okay, hold on, this isn't a sprint, this is a marathon. And we still think that way, right? Like we're just at the beginning of all of this. And look out, here comes cats.
That's so
But no,
wonderful.
I think we really got to start smart.
Sue, how about you?
Well, I would say before Allison and I started CATS, I was working in a physio clinic as an employee, trying to build up their OT department and start. And I would not recommend that. Like, I
Okay.
think if I were doing it again, I would start with OTs. Like, I think I feel like there's enough of us in private practice now that you don't have to go into, I mean, you feel nervous, but I think if I were doing it again, I wouldn't do those years inside someone else's clinic.
And we
Okay.
kind of set up CATS that way too, just to say that, when people on board, they already get to see the trajectory of how you can grow at CATS. And at the top of that is open up your own location, right? People don't need to feel that there's no more room to grow, because it is hard after a while, feeling like you're growing someone else's business.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, how about you? Anything you'd change?
Honestly, no, because any place that I've worked prior, especially in private practice, it really showed me kind of the clinician I wanted to be and what I wanted to share that I felt like I couldn't do someplace else, right? A lot of those clinics had other disciplines that were way more focused than OT. And I think it really gave me the clarity that this is kind of the direction I really, truly wanted to be in. Um, and then honestly, sharing a clinic space initially when I started was wonderful. She was a child psychologist, or still is a child psychologist, and having that support just from a pediatric perspective and kind of the other, how we could kind of grow together, although we were completely separate, was really quite nice. And then again, I saw how that clinic was being structured and run, and it just gave me kind of more motivation to be like, okay, I know that this next step of having my own actual space was right. You could see the progression and the growth. So no, I wouldn't. And honestly, without Sue and Allison, I wouldn't be where I am whatsoever. So I everything just kind of naturally progressed wonderfully and kind of all happened at like these right times. So
Thank you. And, just to reiterate for our listeners, just prior to this last question, I had asked for confirmation that at each of your clinics, it's solely OT based and there aren't other disciplines. And just for anyone that's listening and not watching, we had head nods, but just for confirmation, we need to for anybody that is just listening, none of the clinics have any disciplines other than OT at this time.
Yeah.
only OTs.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That might change. I mean,
Everything changes. That's the
everything
problem, isn't it?
changes,
Yeah.
and there might be somebody interested in joining us that wants to have other disciplines, or they're an owner of, like, maybe they are a physio or a speech path that wants to have an OT, but wants that OT to have the clinical support of cats.
Right.
I think we're kind of open to this. I mean, we haven't really talked a lot about the clinical support, but we provide a lot of clinical support because peds is such a broad area. So for our staff at our clinics and Elizabeth's staff at her clinics, there's a huge range of clinical support that we didn't really talk about too.
And I think, Sue, to your point that you made earlier when you were talking about the difficulty with hiring is, sometimes in your clinical practice, there's a piece that's following the market a little bit, so I have a primarily, mental health, biofeedback, neurofeedback kind of a practice. We started with OTs, but then that sort of evolved to sort of have a lot of psychotherapists join us. And now it seems like there's a little bit more of a swing as well, where the psychotherapy demand isn't necessarily matching what the therapists are able to offer. And it seems to be kind of switching back to now it's more like in person, and we're having more OT interest in the clinic again. So sometimes there's a little bit of ebb and flow. And I just say this to sort of the newer therapists or people who are maybe thinking about it, that sometimes our vision does have to be a little bit flexible with respect to sort of what the market brings us, because you can have a brilliant idea, but if nobody's calling, it takes a little fiddling, nothing stays the same.
Nothing stays the same. Elizabeth, Sue, Allison, thank you so much for joining us.
So interesting. I feel like I want to be emailing you guys all after this and asking more questions.
Do it. Well, thank you for being so open and for sharing your journeys. I do echo what Shari is saying. It is a unique business structure, business model. So, we're really hoping to give our listeners a taste of everything that's out there. And I think you've brought a really, really unique, and from the vibe and sounds of it, supportive network. And so that's a really, really great thing to see. I kind of always say we're OTs first, right? And I think that's really something that I'm seeing from the three of you. So thank you so, so much for joining us. And I wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks so much.
I have to admit, I'd never heard of franchising an OT business until meeting the CATS crew. Visit this episode's description for links to the great resources that were mentioned. In our next episode, we take another turn and learn about a fascinating journey of going from an OT student during the pandemic to taking on a research role to creating a product for sale. Join us next week for our conversation with Michelle Lehman as she talks about pitch competitions in Silicon Valley and developing a product that has global reach. Subscribe so you don't miss that episode, and we'd love it if you shared this series with your OT colleagues.